This is a Grande Pacific production. Okay, welcome back to the Grande Pacific, and today's topic is going to be Nce switch decoders. Nce makes two devices that will control your switch machines. A Switch It, which is on the left, and it will control two machines, or it has two decoder functions into it, and a Switch 8 on the right, which will control 8 switch machines, or it has 8 decoder functions. Please remember this: when you're doing a crossover, you only need one decoder function address. The one address, the system is quite capable of handling both machines that it would take to throw at the same time. From personal experience, I can tell you I've been up to 3 machines throwing at the same time on some of my connections using a mini panel, where you have a route and you push the red button and it throws 3 machines. Sitting in the middle is a tortoise switch machine. Anything in the videos, when I talk about the machine, it will be a tortoise, since it probably represents close to 90% of what's used in the hobby. There are some other good machines out there, so you'll just have to substitute any quirks of those machines as with what I'm going to talk about. So this will cover the beginning part here of what we're going to be discussing today. Okay, moving ahead here. This is a Switch It. It will throw 2 switch machines, or it has 2 decoders in it. And some of my conversations, and when I write things on the JMRI chat room or NCE chat room, I refer to the left side and the right side. Left side being where you hook the track power to, and switch A and switch B, and then the reset connection. I say that's the left, and this is the right. To program switch A, you have to run a wire from this terminal right here. Counting from the bottom, it would be screw 2, and then you have to connect the other end of the wire to screw 4. That's basically the same thing you'll see me do later on with a little pin device on the switch 8. It's the shunt. You have to connect it from here to here, then you program the switch, then you remove it. The last 3 terminals here and the last 3 up here for the 2 switches are where you can connect a trigger switch to throw the switch. This is the problem we talk about on the chat room in reference to JMRI and the command station. If you use these connections to throw the switch, and the left side, it's like there's a big block right here in the middle. This does not report in the command station. There's only 3 ways to throw a JMR switch in the NCE system that will report and show up in the command station, and JMRI will read it. 1 is from your controller, i.e. right there, select accessory. 2 is from a mini panel, and I don't have one to show you. And 3 is for the off the panel itself. Okay, this is the Switch 8. Let's talk about a couple of things on the Switch 8. Down here on the bottom, these are the connections for each one of your switch machines. This could be 2 on one terminal if you have a crossover. Let's just say that terminals 1 and 2 represents the first decoder. 3, 4 is the next decoder, so on down the line. That's well shown inside the manual, which one's which. It gets into exactly what's covered. Very nice manual, simple to understand, tells you everything you need to know. So on this side here, 22 gauge wire, you're not going to have any problem. Right here, the connection to the track, you need to use 18 gauge wire. 18s is bigger wires you're going to get into this connection, but you need to get it there, and you need to solder that connection to the track bus or the switch bus. We'll talk about that in a minute. And make sure you have good connections. If you don't, this is going to lead to a problem. This is the shunt. We'll talk about that when we program. And this is the little knob that tells you where you are. And it is currently set in the wrong position for track 1. So I have to go in here with the screwdriver and turn this little thing till the arrow is on the 0. And I'll try to get this to focus. It is now set on the 0. The little arrow on the device is set on the 0, so that is terminal 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are the 8 terminals, or the connections for each decoder that's built into this device right here. That is a computer. So you don't need to worry about 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. Those are irrelevant. Evidently this was put together as a piece. Now, let's talk about the general operation on a layout. If you have a small home layout, and this is going to be your 8 switches, the next part of this discussion I wouldn't worry about. Run it right off your track bus and have fun. Don't make anything any more difficult. For the rest of us, or a large number, you got a big layout like mine, and this is a case of do as I say, not as I did. Okay? Get you another 5 amp booster, and this is for the NC people, and make this your switch, and run another set of wires around, different color, and make it a switch bus. Okay, people, this is an old booster, please. That switch doesn't exist anymore. This is a PB105. If you buy a new one, it'll be a P5, come with a power supply. You only have one set of holes here, and then you'll have a hole over here for the electrical connection from the power supply. So this is just a representative thing here. Another 5 amp booster. The main point is this is the command control bus. This would come from one of your other units or from the command station. It goes in here. That gets the signal that your little decoders need to see onto your switch bus. So that way, when you have a train, and most of us know in the hobby that the shorts occur when a train derails on a switch, and if it's shorted in that division where that switch is, then you cannot throw the switch to correct the problem. If you run a separate switch bus, even though the district's shorted, you can still throw the switch. So for the clubs, large layouts, I highly recommend running a bus line just to hook your switch machines off. One other little note, this device, when you have 8, and you could have 10, 11 machines hooked to it, and the system's on, and all those machines are in the stall position, it draws about a half volt. So that's something to consider. I've seen what it does on my layout, and that's why I'm going to go back in and put in a switch bus. Okay, that's why I said do as I say, not as I do. So that's moving on. We're going to get into something very important. Okay, back to my little lesson here about doing this. Pros and cons a little bit, but one of the issues that you constantly run into with putting these wires into all these little terminals is right here at the end. You can end up with frayed wires. One little wire sticks out and it touches another terminal. You you might have just blown the machine. I take the time, and in this case with this railroad, this is a lot of time, to tint all of the ends that I stick into these things. So you just simply have some soldering paste, you stick the end of it in the soldering paste, you got your 6040 rosin core soldered, you get it on the end of the soldering iron. Soldering iron needs to be good and hot. Please end all the cold soldering joints, you know, that's the trick to it. Put your solder on, and that is now a nice tip. You're not going to have little wires coming loose and going all over the place. So because we're going to need to get to these two wires, well, there should be 4 here. Because we're going to need to get to these wires, we're going to do the, we have to use these later. We're going to do the same thing here with these, and we're going to tint these also, because we don't want any frayed wires roaming over onto that other terminal. Just don't want that to happen, people, because, you know, some of these little parts get expensive. And as I said, loose wires, hookups have been the only reason I've seen parts failures. And that goes back now into the last century. So we got the wires tinted. Okay, so let's go through wiring this up and what you need to do. Right there, I have run, let's go down here first, sorry. Right here, we've run 2 wires from our track bus. This is our track bus. We'll tell you, this is not a fancy track bus as we follow it back. Just so you understand what we did here today, just for this purposes. Alligator clip, okay, this is not the right gauge wire, people. Just don't take this for gospel. And piece of track that's going to be live in a minute there on the railroad. And we just took the alligator clips, put them on there for the purposes of demonstration only. Now, for you, when you hook this up, you want this piece of wire right here to be 18 gauge wire, 2 colors. Be consistent, people. Pick out some colors and some rolls of wire. You got enough of to do everything you want to do. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so be consistent. The thing that happens later on down the road, something goes crazy and you got to go start looking, and it's easier to track colors of wire than it is things that aren't. So this thing. So we hooked that 2 wires up, that's your track bus. Then we hooked up 2 leads off of terminals 1 and 2. As you can, I guess, see right about now. Right here. It's terminals 1 and 2. And they come over here to my motor lead, which runs to the tortoise machine. Okay. So, other than the fact that the system's not on right at the moment, we're all set up and ready to program. So, key to programming. Anytime you program on this device, you have to have the shunt pin in the right programming mode. And you will see there's 2 pins right there. To be in the program mode, it has to connect the 2. Okay, so it's over both, so it is currently in the program mode for, gotta see where I am, for position 0, which is terminals 1 and 2. So we're ready to go to program this switch. Let's talk about what is the number. Okay. I'm going to say, if I read through the instructions here somewhere, forgot the exact number, there can be 2,600 and something odd accessory devices on the railroad. So you need to pick where your numbers are going to be. Me, for a bigger railroad, this was relatively simple. And I'll give you an idea real quick here. That's level 1, so all the switches down there are 100s. That's level 2, so all the switches on that level are 200s. And that's level 3, so all the switches up there are 300s. I do have some narrow gauge on the other side, and the switches in the narrow gauge are 400s. So some type of logic. I'm going to tell you, do not use single digit numbers. I don't care how big, how small your railroad is, do not use single digit numbers. Too many chances for mistakes. Double digits, you're getting better. You're eliminating possible mistakes. Which the majority of people's layouts are all one level, so double digit numbers are okay. Don't know where else you're going to go with accessory numbers yet. There's some talk about things coming in the future, but who knows. So have you a scheme of numbering? When I numbered this layout for switches, let's take this switch right here. That was switch 215 right there. And then that's one next to it, the next crossover is 216. I work my way around the layout, right behind me here, that's 207, 208. Now, only switches on my main line or switches that are involved in something the dispatchers has to control are motorized and decoder and detected and all that. The industry right behind it, that switch is just a ground throw, as you can see by the little Caboose Hobby ground throws. So you really need to think about the whole thing. So if you pick a 2-digit number and you have a layout and you're going around, you don't want to just start in one place and say this is number 10, 11, 12 and continue on around and try to do it. Because guess what? You're going to change your mind and say, oh, I want to add a switch here. I want to add a switch there. So what I would suggest is start with 10, put in a couple of switches, go down the railroad a little ways, and then make it 20. Put in a couple of switches, go around another part of the railroad, make it 30. And then go a little further than 40. Get the idea. Leave you some numbers in the area which you're working in. That won't mean too much to your other operators, but it will mean something to you when you get ready to, while you're building all these things, the order sequence and where things are. And if you, like I said, I use multiple levels. The 3-digit number, believe it or not, in all the operating sessions we've had here with all the operators, we have not had somebody throw a switch in the wrong place because primarily of the way it's sequenced in the 3-digit numbers. It really gets to be a long shot probability of somebody throwing a switch somewhere else. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take you through the steps that this thing's all set up, and I got to go turn the system on. Okay, well, I kind of got a 23-minute limit on videos, so we're going to have to go to part 2 on the Switch It, Switch 8 video. One additional comment I'll throw in here. With the new power cab system with the 1.65, you can get into some of the features that were talked about here, but one thing you cannot do, and you will see at the end of part 2, is the monitoring on the in JMRI Layout Editor. The Power Cab does not provide the monitoring capability. So we'll just throw that one point in. It was pointed out on the board the other day. So on to part 2. You will have to find it on the YouTube channel in the playlist.